The water is still here, a mirror of the dark sky, reflecting nothing but the slow drift of stars above the harbor. I sit where the stone meets the tide, feeling the cool dampness seep through the wool of my tunic, a sensation that has not changed in decades. The silence is not empty. It is full of the memory of galleys cutting through the swell, the rhythmic creak of oars, the distant murmur of a fleet preparing for the dawn. My hands, once caroused from the tiller and the sword, now rest lightly on the rough granite, tracing the grain of the rock as if reading a map of a life already completed. There is no rush here. The wind moves softly through the reeds, carrying the scent of salt and wet earth, a perfume that has accompanied me from the muddy banks of the Tiber to the shores of Actium. In this quiet, the noise of the world falls away, leaving only the steady breath of the sea and the weight of years that have settled like silt on the riverbed. I am not the general nor the consul, nor the builder of aqueducts in this moment. I am simply a man watching the water, listening to the rhythm of a world that finally rests, just as I am learning to do. The air grows heavy with the scent of turpentine and linseed oil as the light shifts across the southern hills. Olive trees stand like ancient sentinels, their silver leaves turning in a slow, hypnotic dance under the warmth of the Campanian afternoon. A simple wooden table holds a small bronze lamp, its flame flickering without fear of the gentle breeze drifting through open shutters. Dust motes dance lazily in the beams of light, moving with a slow, meditative grace that mirrors the quiet passing of time. The walls are adorned with simple frescoes, depicting scenes of harvest and peaceful rural life, their colors faded but still warm under the gentle touch of the sun. A woven rug covers the center of the floor, its texture soft and inviting against the bare feet of a weary traveler. This space holds the quiet dignity of a life well lived, free from the clamor of the city and the noise of war. The heavy wooden doors remain shut, sealing the room from the bustle of the world beyond. A bronze statue of a seated philosopher stands in the corner, its patina worn smooth by centuries of careful handling. The texture of the stone feels cool and solid under the imagined touch of a hand seeking rest. Outside, the distant sound of a fountain trickles rhythmically, providing a soothing backdrop to the silence within. The geometric perfection of the space invites a deep, contemplative breath, allowing the mind to settle into a state of peaceful observation. Shadows lengthen slowly across the interior as the day turns, marking the passage of time with a gentle, unobtrusive rhythm. This architectural marvel remains a silent guardian of the legacy of the man who first raised it, the history of the man who built these walls is often written in dates and battles, yet the true measure of his life lies in the quiet moments between the storms. He navigated the complexities of power with a grace that earned the respect of peers and the love of family. His story remains a testament to the power of loyalty and the enduring value of service to the state. The legacy of his work continues to shape the understanding of Roman architecture and military strategy today. His life ended not with a dramatic climax, but with a quiet acceptance of the natural order of things. The historical record preserves his name as a man of action who preferred substance over style in all his endeavors. His contributions to the stability of the regime were as vital as any sword thrust or strategic maneuver. He helped reshape the Roman world after the chaos of civil war, removing threats to the control of the seas and securing the rise of a new order. He served as a powerful deputy, managing affairs with skill and dedication while working side by side with the first emperor in a final act of trust. His sons were adopted to ensure his lineage would continue to shape the empire for generations. The phrase "chaos," tertium on the Pantheon inscription emphasizes his political stature, influencing interpretations of intentions long after his death. His death in Campania marked the end of an era of active military and civic leadership, but his spirit lived on in the structures he built. The empire continued to expand and flourish under the guidance of those he had helped to elevate. His legacy was one of quiet strength, visible in "I was born into a time when the Republic was fraying at the edges, a fabric worn thin by ambition and discord. My father, Lucius Vipsanius Agrippa, was a man of some standing in the equestrian order, yet our origins were humble compared to the patrician giants who dominated the Senate. We lived in the shadow of the great families, but our path was not written in the blood of kings. I grew up in the bustling heart of Rome, where the air was thick with the dust of construction and the clamor of political maneuvering. It was there, in the schoolrooms of the city, that my education began in a space of simple stone and wood. Sunlight filtered through the high windows to illuminate dust motes dancing in the air. A wooden desk held scrolls of papyrus that smelled faintly of ink and aged paper. The walls were painted with scenes of mythology or perhaps maps of the known world. A clay lamp sat on the floor, ready to provide a soft glow as the afternoon light faded. The air was cool and still, filled only with the distant sound of birds singing in the garden outside. Shadows stretched across the mosaic floor as the day slowly turned toward evening. The silence of the room offered a peaceful refuge from the noise and chaos of the city streets. It was a place of quiet contemplation where a young mind could focus on the lessons of the past. The texture of the rough stone walls provided a sense of permanence and stability in a changing world. Even the scent of the olive oil in the lamp added a warm and comforting note to the atmosphere. This simple environment nurtured the intellectual growth of many young men who would shape the future of Rome. The quiet rhythm of the day mirrored the steady pace of learning and reflection that defined their education. My rise was not a sudden leap, but a steady climb up a long and steep path. I did not rely on noble lineage, but rather on my demonstrated ability and unwavering loyalty to a single friend. The uncertainty of my birthplace did not hinder my ascent to the highest levels of Roman society. Some say I was born in Arpino, with its ancient stone walls, while others claim Istria or Assisium as my origin. I never felt the need to fix my birth to a single coordinate on a map. My education equipped me with the skills necessary to navigate the complex political landscape of my time. I studied rhetoric, law, and military strategy under the guidance of experienced tutors who saw potential in my quiet determination. These formative years prepared me for a life of public service and military command in the years to come. The young me moved through the schools of Rome with a steady pace that marked my character. I formed a lasting friendship with Gaius Octavius, who would later become the first Roman emperor known as Augustus. This bond began in our youth and would prove to be the most significant political alliance of our generation. We studied together and shared a vision for the future stability of the Roman state. The assassination of Julius Caesar in 44 BC marked a turning point in the trajectory of my life. Following this violent event, the political landscape shifted dramatically as various factions vied for control. I was elected as a tribune of the plebs. During this period of intense political upheaval and uncertainty, this office gave me a voice in the Senate and allowed me to represent the interests of the people. The military campaigns I led alongside Octavian established my reputation as a formidable commander. These early experiences were crucial in shaping the man who would later build the navy and win decisive battles. The weight of command sat heavy on my shoulders, yet it felt like a natural extension of my own will. I learned to read the wind and the waves as well as I read the faces of men in the forum. The smell of salt and tar became as familiar to me as the scent of ink and parchment. I walked the decks of ships that groaned under the tension of the sea, feeling the wood vibrate beneath my boots. The roar of the ocean was a constant companion, a reminder of the chaos that could be tamed by discipline and skill. The light in the great hall of the Pantheon shifted slowly as the afternoon wore on, casting long, soft shadows across the geometric patterns of the floor. Marble columns stood in silent rows, their fluted shafts catching the warm glow of the sun. The smooth surface of the concrete dome curved upward in a perfect hemisphere, creating a sense of infinite space above. A gentle breeze moved through the open oculus at the apex, carrying the faint scent of ancient stone and dry earth. Shadows lengthened slowly across the interior as the sun moved its slow arc across the sky. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant murmur of the city outside the massive walls. This space felt timeless, a sanctuary where the noise of the world faded into a quiet hum. The architecture itself seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting with the subtle shifts of light and temperature. It was a place designed for contemplation, where the mind could rest and the spirit could find peace. The craftsmanship of the builders was evident in every joint and every curve of the structure. They had created something that transcended mere utility to become a work of enduring beauty. The harmony of the proportions created a sense of balance that was deeply soothing to the observer. One could sit for hours and watch the play of light on the walls without feeling the need to move. The space held a quiet dignity that spoke of the care and attention given to its creation. It was a testament to the vision of those who had built it and the hands that had shaped it. The air inside felt cool and still, a stark contrast to the heat of the summer day outside. I remember the day I first saw the horizon from the prow of a warship, the salt spray stinging my face as the vessel cut through the swell. The wind filled the sails with a sound like a deep breath, and the wood creaked in response to the rhythm of the waves. I felt the stability of the ship beneath my feet, a solid foundation in a world that often felt unsteady. My friends and I had walked these same streets as boys, dreaming of glory and power, but we found that true strength lay in service and sacrifice. The assassination of Caesar had shattered the old order, and we were left to build something new from the rubble. I did not seek the throne or the crown, but I accepted the burden of building a navy that could secure the peace. The battles we fought were not just about land or sea, but about the future of the Republic itself. I saw men fall and I saw cities rise, and I learned that history is written in the blood of the living and the stone of the dead. My work set a precedent for future emperors who would continue to use art for political purposes. The legacy of my patronage can still be seen in the ruins of ancient Rome today. Visitors walk through the remains of my baths and temples and sense the grandeur of the past. The atmosphere of these spaces evokes a sense of calm and reflection on the passage of time. I have come to understand that the greatest victories are not those won on the battlefield, but those won in the quiet moments of building and creating. The Roman concrete used in these structures was a mixture of volcanic ash and lime, a formula that allowed the buildings to endure for centuries. This simple chemical reaction created a bond stronger than the stone itself, a metaphor for the alliances we forged in the fires of conflict. I look back now with a sense of calm, knowing that the work was done and the foundation was laid. the noise of the city has faded, and only the memory of the sea remains. The air in Rome had grown heavy with the scent of burning torches and the metallic tang of fear. I remember the streets shifting under my feet as the political landscape fractured into jagged pieces, each faction grasping for control with desperate hands. It was a time when the old rules dissolved like salt in rain, leaving only the raw struggle for dominance. I found myself standing in the shadow of a new order, elected as a tribune of the plebs while the city held its breath. This office gave me a voice in the Senate, a chance to speak for those who had no one to hear them. I stood alongside Octavian, who had returned to Italy to claim the inheritance of a father he had never known. He often called himself Caesar, a name that obscured his humble beginnings and legitimized his claim to the throne. I saw the weight of that name settle on his young shoulders, a burden he carried with a quiet determination. I stood by his side as a loyal commander during the early, chaotic struggles for power. We fought together in the critical battles that would decide the fate of the Roman world. Our partnership was built on a trust that needed no words, a shared understanding of the storms we faced. My early life was defined by this unwavering loyalty and a reputation that grew with every campaign. I rose from a plebeian background to become one of the most trusted advisors to the future emperor. My name appears in the records as a colleague in the 6th consulship of the new regime. The quiet strength I showed in those youth years foreshadowed the great achievements that lay ahead. I did not seek the spotlight for myself, but worked diligently to support the stability of the state. My early experiences in the chaos following Caesar's death forged a resilience that served me well in later campaigns. The historical record preserves the memory of a man who rose from obscurity to become a pillar of the empire. My journey from a boy of uncertain birth to a celebrated general is a testament to ability and character. The foundations of greatness were laid in those formative years of friendship and political struggle. The room where a young Roman student might have studied was often a simple space of stone and wood. Sunlight filtered through the high windows to illuminate the dust motes dancing in the air. A wooden desk held scrolls of papyrus that smelled faintly of ink and aged paper. The walls were rough, unplastered, and cool to the touch even in the height of summer. Shadows stretched long across the floor as the day wore on, marking the slow passage of time. A single oil lamp sat on the corner, its flame flickering in the draught from the open door. The silence inside was broken only by the scratching of a stylus on wax or the turning of a heavy page. It was a place of quiet concentration, far removed from the shouting of the forum outside. The smell of beeswax mixed with the dry scent of old parchment, creating a perfume of learning and order. In that stillness, the mind could find a path through the confusion of the world. The stone floor was worn smooth by the feet of generations who had walked there before. Each step echoed softly, a reminder of the continuity of life even as empires rose and fell. The light shifted slowly, painting the room in hues of gold and amber before fading into the gray of twilight. The civil wars were not fought with grand declarations, but with the slow grind of armies marching across the land. I remember the mud that clung to our boots, the smell of wet wool and unwashed bodies in the camp. We moved through the Italian countryside, a river of steel and leather flowing toward the next confrontation. The sky was often overcast, a blanket of gray that matched the mood of the men. I saw the faces of soldiers who had known me since childhood, their eyes hard with the knowledge of what was to come. We did not speak of victory or defeat, only of the next mile and the next meal. The political upheaval was a storm that swept us all along, leaving little room for individual choice. I served as a tribune, representing the common people while the great men plotted their moves. The Senate was a place of whispers and hidden glances, where every word could start a war. Octavian and I moved through this labyrinth with a shared purpose, our bond tested by every challenge. We faced the dangers of the early struggles with a calm that surprised even ourselves. The loyalty I felt was not a blind obedience, but a deep understanding of the man beside me. He was the future, and I was the hand that would help shape it. The battles were brutal and unglamorous, fought in fields of mud and blood. I saw the cost of power in the eyes of the fallen. Men who had hoped for peace but found only war. The chaos of those years forged a resilience that would last a lifetime. We learned to move quickly, to strike hard, and to retreat when necessary. The streets of Rome were no longer safe, and the old order had crumbled into dust. I rose from the ranks of the obscure to become a general, a friend, and a pillar of the state. My name was written in the annals of history, not for my own glory, but for the stability I helped create. The early life of a man is often defined by the choices made in the dark. I chose to stand by my friend, to fight for a future I could barely see. The foundations of the empire were laid in the blood and sweat of those days. The silence that followed the battles was as heavy as the noise that preceded them. We had changed the world, but the cost was etched into every line on our faces. The political landscape had shifted dramatically, and there was no going back. The Republic was gone, and in its place stood something new and uncertain. I accepted this new reality with a calm that came from knowing the path was right. The memory of those years remains vivid, a tapestry of war and peace woven together. The lessons learned in the mud of the battlefield guided me through the rest of my life. The strength I found in those early days was the strength that would carry me to the end. A stone archway stood alone in the garden, its surface covered in patches of green moss that felt soft and cool under the fingertips. Vines climbed the rough stone, their leaves trembling slightly in the gentle breeze. The air around the arch was still and cool, smelling of damp earth and crushed herbs. Sunlight filtered through the leaves above, casting dappled patterns on the ground below. A small bird landed on the top of the arch, its song clear and bright in the quiet afternoon. The stone was warm from the morning sun, but cooled quickly as the shadow of the leaves moved across it. Water dripped from a nearby fountain, the sound rhythmic and soothing, like a slow heartbeat. The garden was a place of refuge, a small world where the chaos of the city could not reach. The moss grew thick in the crevices of the stone, a testament to the patience of time. A few fallen leaves lay scattered on the ground, their colors faded to brown and gold. The silence here was deep and full, a presence that invited rest and reflection. The arch stood as a silent witness to the years that had passed, a monument to the quiet moments that often go unnoticed. It was a reminder that even in the midst of great change, there were places where time seemed to stand still. The garden was a place where the mind could wander without fear, where the heart could find a moment of peace. The stone arch remained unchanged, a constant in a world of shifting sands. The moss continued to grow, slow and steady, covering the scars of the past. The bird flew away, leaving the arch alone once more, a silent guardian of the garden. The census performed with me, as a colleague occurred, after an interval of 41 years of Roman history. In this lustration, 463,000 Roman citizens were entered on the census roll under my supervision. This massive administrative task demonstrated the stability that I helped establish for the new regime. The numbers were more than just ink on a scroll. They were the lives of millions, the heartbeat of the empire. I saw the faces of the men who came to register, their eyes filled with hope or fear. The process was slow and methodical, a testament to the order we had built from the chaos. The census was a way to count the people, to know the strength of the state. It was a moment of peace, a pause in the endless march of war. The numbers grew steadily, each one a story of a life lived and a family formed. The stability of the regime depended on this knowledge, on the ability to see the whole picture. I oversaw the process with a quiet attention, ensuring that every name was recorded correctly. The census was a symbol of the new order, a way to bring the people together. It was a reminder that the empire was not just a collection of lands, but a collection of people. The numbers were a testament to the resilience of the Roman spirit. I felt a deep sense of pride in the work, a quiet satisfaction in the order that had been restored. The census was a bridge between the past and the future, a way to honor the dead and plan for the living. The 463,000 names were a legacy that would endure long after I was gone. The census was a moment of clarity in a world that often felt confused and uncertain. It was a reminder that even in the midst of change, there was a core of stability that held everything together. The work was done, and the role was complete, a record of a people united. The silence that followed the final entry was a silence of accomplishment, of a task well done. The numbers would remain, a testament to the strength of the empire and the people who built it. The census was a moment of peace, a pause in the endless march of history. It was a reminder that the empire was a living thing, growing and changing with the people who called it home. The work was done, and the future was secure. A promise kept to the generations that would follow. The morning air at Actium held a heavy stillness, thick with the scent of brine and the sharp tang of unwashed wool. I stood on the prow of the flagship, feeling the wooden deck vibrate beneath my boots as the fleet prepared to move against the tide. The horizon was a pale line of gray where the sea met the sky, blurred by a mist that had not yet burned away with the sun. Thousands of men waited in silence, their breath visible in the cool dawn. A sea of faces turned toward the enemy lines that stretched across the water. The opposing force was immense, a wall of 500 ships commanded by Mark Antony, their sails dark against the gray water. Our own fleet, 400 strong, sat ready to meet them, a smaller but disciplined line of galleys cutting the swell. The tension was not a sharp thing, but a low hum, felt in the bones rather than heard by the ears. I watched the water lap against the hull, the rhythm steady and unchanging despite the storm of politics that had brought us here. The infantry of 80,000 men waited on the shore behind us, a solid mass of spears and shields that anchored our position. On the other side, Antony commanded 70,000 infantry, their campfires still smoking in the early light. The sea breathed slowly, its rhythm matching the quiet pulse of the night before the sun fully rose. Everything was still, peaceful, and full of a deep, enduring calm before the violence that was to come. The mist began to lift, revealing the sheer scale of the enemy fleet, a forest of masts and rigging that seemed to block out the world. I did not feel fear, only a cold clarity that had settled over me during the long years of preparation. The strategy was simple in its execution, a matter of maneuver and discipline rather than brute force. We would not meet their heavy ships head-on, but would use our speed to harry their lines, to break their formation with precise strikes. The oarsmen sat poised, their hands resting on the smooth wood of the handles, waiting for the signal to drive the ships forward. The air grew warmer as the sun climbed higher, burning off the last of the mist and revealing the full danger of the situation. Antony's ships were larger, heavier, built for a clash that would crush anything in their path. But they were slow and unwieldy in the open water. Our vessels were lighter, built for speed and agility, designed to dance around the enemy and strike where they were weakest. The silence was broken only by the creak of timber and the soft splash of water as the ships adjusted their positions. I thought of the long march that had brought us here, the years of building a fleet from nothing, the training of men who had never seen war. The work had been hard, the nights long, but the moment had finally arrived to test everything we had built. The sea was a great leveler, where the number of ships mattered less than the skill of the men who rowed them. I looked back at the shore, at the silent army waiting for the outcome of the battle that would decide the fate of Rome. The future hung in the balance, a fragile thing that could be shattered by a single misstep or a moment of hesitation. The signal was given, a flash of light from the flagship, and the fleet surged forward, the oars striking the water in unison. The sound was a deep thrum that rose from the sea, a rhythm that would become the heartbeat of the empire. We moved as one, a single organism of wood and muscle, cutting through the water with a speed that surprised even those who had planned the attack. The enemy ships began to turn, their heavy hulls struggling to respond to the sudden movement. The battle was joined, not with a roar, but with the sharp clash of ramming, prows, and the cry of men in the heat of the fight. The water churned white as our ships darted in and out, striking the flanks of the heavier vessels and pulling away before they could counter. The smoke from the fires on the shore rose higher, a dark cloud that drifted over the battlefield, obscuring the view and adding to the confusion. I watched as our tactics unfolded, the plan I had devised in the quiet of the tent now playing out on the vast stage of the sea. The enemy lines began to break, their formation dissolving into chaos as our ships tore through their ranks. The heavy ships of Antony were no match for the speed and precision of our fleet, their size becoming a burden rather than an advantage. The sea was filled with the sound of splintering wood and the shouts of men, a cacophony that drowned out the rhythm of the oars. The mist had returned, rolling in from the north to cover the retreat of the enemy, a final gift from the gods to those who had lost. Antony's ships turned and fled, their sails full of wind as they sought the safety of the open sea. The battle was won, not by the sheer number of men, but by the discipline and skill of the fleet I had commanded. The victory was quiet in its aftermath, a settling of dust as the sun finally broke through the smoke and illuminated the wreckage of the enemy fleet. The sea was calm again, the water still and dark, reflecting the sky above with a mirror. like surface. The men on the ships lowered their oars, their breath coming in ragged gasps as the adrenaline of the fight began to fade. The silence returned, heavier now, filled with the weight of what had been decided. The empire would be born from this day, a new order rising from the ashes of the old. I stood on the deck, feeling the wood beneath my feet, the same wood that had carried us to victory. The sea breathed slowly, its rhythm matching the quiet pulse of the night. Everything was still, peaceful, and full of a deep, enduring calm. The quiet stone of the Pantheon stands today as a meditative space where the past and present meet in stillness. Sunlight filters through the great oculus, illuminating the dust motes that dance in the air with a slow, rhythmic grace. The cool marble walls absorb the sounds of the modern city, creating a sanctuary of silence that echoes the calm of the ancient world. Visitors walk softly across the floor, their footsteps muffled by the weight of history and the vastness of the dome above. The geometric perfection of the space invites a deep, contemplative breath, allowing the mind to settle into a state of peaceful observation. Shadows lengthen slowly across the interior as the day turns, marking the passage of time with a gentle, unobtrusive rhythm. This architectural marvel remains a silent guardian of quiet dignity that spoke of the care and attention given to its creation. It was a testament to the vision of those who had built it and the hands that had shaped it. The air inside felt cool and still, a stark contrast to the heat of the summer day outside. The silence invited a deep sense of calm that settled over the visitor like a heavy cloak, shielding them from the chaos of the world. The stone walls held the memory of the empire, a physical manifestation of the order that had been forged in the fires of conflict. The dome rose above, a perfect circle that seemed to touch the sky, a symbol of the heavens and the earth united. The light moved slowly across the floor, a slow dance of shadows and illumination that marked the hours of the day. The space was a place of rest, a haven for the weary traveler seeking a moment of peace in a life of turmoil. The quiet dignity of the structure spoke of a time when men built for eternity, when the goal was not just to survive but to create something that would last. The stone was cool to the touch, a reminder of the earth from which it came, a connection to the ground that supported us all. The silence was not empty but full of the voices of the past, a chorus of those who had walked these floors before. The light filtered through the oculus, a single beam that cut through the darkness, a symbol of hope in the midst of uncertainty. The space was a testament to the power of human will, a physical expression of the desire to build a better world. The quiet stone of the Pantheon stands as a reminder of the battles that were fought and the peace that was won. The empire was not a monarchy in name, But Julia the Elder's position was key to imperial succession, disproving claims that the empire was not a monarchy. Through his daughter, his influence extended into the dynastic future of Rome. The silence of the sea at Actium was the silence of a world waiting to be remade. The victory was not just a military triumph, but a shift in the very fabric of society. The fleet that had fought so hard now lay at anchor, their sails furled, their oars resting. The men sat on the decks, their faces turned toward the shore, watching the sun rise over the land they had saved. The battle was over, but the work was just beginning. The empire would need to be built, the laws written, the cities founded. The victory at Actium was the foundation upon which everything else would rest. The sea was a great teacher, showing us that strength comes not from size but from skill and unity. The ships that had fought so well were now silent, their hulls resting in the water, a testament to the power of human ingenuity. The victory was a quiet thing, a settling of the dust that allowed the new world to emerge. The sea breathed slowly, its rhythm matching the quiet pulse of the night. Everything was still peaceful and full of a deep, enduring calm. The memory of the battle faded into the background, a story told in whispers around the campfires of the future. The men who had fought would go on to build the empire, to lay the stones of the roads and the walls of the cities. The victory at Actium was the first step in a long journey, a journey that would shape the world. The dust of the road settled on my sandals as I walked the hills of Gaul, feeling the weight of the province in the heavy silence that stretched between the forests. I had traded the roar of battle for the quiet rhythm of administration, finding a different kind of strength in the ledger and the surveyor's chain. The air there smelled of damp pine and wet earth, a sharp contrast to the salt spray of the naval campaigns that had defined my earlier years. I moved through the villages, not as a conqueror demanding tribute, but as a man seeking to bring order. A land that had known only chaos for too long. The people looked at me with a mixture of suspicion and hope, their eyes tracking my every step as I marked the boundaries of their fields with simple wooden stakes. It was a slow, deliberate work that required a patience I had never needed when commanding a fleet against Antony. I spent my days walking the muddy paths, measuring the distance between settlements, and listening to the complaints of farmers who had lost their harvest to the ravages of war. The work was tedious, yet it felt more vital than any victory I had won on the open sea, for it built something that would last long after the soldiers had gone home. I saw the need for roads that could carry grain to the cities, for aqueducts that could bring clean water to the thirsty towns, and for baths where the weary could wash away the grime of their labor. This was the true foundation of peace. not the sword that cut down enemies, but the stone that sheltered the living. A stone arch rises from the mist, its curve perfect and unbroken against the gray sky. The mortar between the blocks is smooth, worn by centuries of wind and rain, yet holding firm. A single vine clings to the left side, its leaves a deep emerald green that contrasts with the dull gray of the limestone. Water trickles from a small opening near the top, falling in a thin, steady stream that catches the light, before disappearing into the moss below. The sound is soft, a continuous whisper that fills the space around the structure, masking the distant rustle of the forest. The air here is cool and damp, smelling of wet stone and ancient earth, creating a sanctuary where time seems to stand still. I walk the length of the aqueduct, running my hand along the rough surface of the channel, feeling the coolness of the water that rushed beneath the stone floor. It was a marvel of engineering, a river made of stone that defied the natural slope of the land to bring life to the parched city. I had designed the gradient with such care, calculating the drop with a precision that left no room for error, ensuring the water would flow with a steady, gentle force. The men who built it had followed my instructions with a dedication that matched my own, laying each block with a care that spoke of their understanding of the task. They knew that this structure would serve generations they would never meet, that it would outlive their own short lives and stand as a testament to the order we had brought to the empire. I remember standing at the source of the spring, watching the water bubble up from the earth, clear and cold, and feeling a profound sense of purpose that no battle had ever given me. The city below was thirsty, its fountains dry and its baths empty. But this river of stone would change everything. I saw the future in the flow of that water, a future where the people could live in health and comfort, free from the fear of drought and disease. It was a quiet victory, one that would not be celebrated with triumphal arches or parades, but it was a victory all the same. The Senate held me in high regard for these works, though I never sought their praise, for the praise of the people was enough. They saw the water in their fountains and the steam rising from the baths, and they knew that I had provided for them. My loyalty to Augustus was absolute. Yet it was expressed in these tangible things, in the stone and the water that bound us together. We were building a new world, one brick at a time, one aqueduct at a time, and the foundations we laid would support the peace of a century. The political landscape shifted around us, with Livia maneuvering for her sons and the new generation preparing to take the reins, but I remained focused on the work at hand. The adoption of my sons Gaius and Lucius by Augustus was a moment of great significance, securing their place in the line of succession and binding our families together in a way that politics alone could not. I watched them grow, knowing that they would carry the weight of the empire on their shoulders, and I'd hoped that the stability I had built would give them a chance to rule without the chaos that had plagued our fathers. The marriage to Julia had been a union of duty and affection, creating a home in the heart of Rome where public and private life blended seamlessly. She was a woman of spirit and independence, and together we raised a family that would shape the future of the state. We had 3 sons and 2 daughters, each one a thread in the tapestry of our legacy, each one a promise of continuity in a world that had known so much disruption. The daily routine of our lives was filled with the management of our vast estates and the oversight of the public works that kept the city running. I found solace in the rhythm of these tasks, the predictable cadence of the census and the survey that brought order to the chaos of the human population. The census of my 6th consulship was a massive undertaking, a counting of the people that helped organize the vast territories under Roman control. It was a task that required immense precision and a steady hand, for the numbers would determine the taxes and the levies that would sustain the empire. I worked tirelessly through the long days and the cold nights, my mind focused on the figures and the lists that represented the lives of millions. The work was exhausting, yet it was a work of peace, a way of taming the wildness of the world and bringing it under the rule of law. The old republic had fallen into violence and intimidation, with scores settled by clubs and daggers, but I had helped to bring a sense of structure to that world. The transition from republic to empire was a long and difficult process, but it was one that I had helped to guide with a steady hand. The stability we created allowed for a golden age of art and literature to flourish, and I was proud to have played a part in that cultural awakening. The writers and artists of the age thrived under the patronage of the regime, but my contribution was in the stone and the water, in the public spaces where the people could gather and live. I understood that great cities required great public spaces, and I had designed them with the needs of a growing and diverse population in mind. The aqueducts ensured a reliable water supply for baths, fountains, and private homes, while the baths provided hygiene and social interaction for people of all classes. The gardens I opened to the public offered a respite from the crowded streets, a place where the weary could rest and find peace. These public works demonstrated a deep commitment to the welfare of the Roman people, and they were the true measure of my life's work. The Pantheon was among the projects I initiated, a temple that would stand as a symbol of the peace and prosperity of the age. Though it would be completed by later emperors, the vision was mine, and the dedication inscription would preserve my name for all time. The dome of the Pantheon would one day inspire architects and engineers around the world, its design principles influencing the construction of domes. In churches and government buildings for centuries to come, even the later rebuilding of the structure retained the dedication inscription of Agrippa, a testament to the endurance of my work. The city benefited from my extensive network of aqueducts and public baths, and the water flowed freely to the people through my engineering expertise and dedication. The aqueducts I built remained functional for centuries after my departure from this world, a silent witness to the care I had taken in their construction. My administrative skills were as formidable as my tactical genius had been on the battlefield, and I managed the vast resources of the empire with a steady and reliable hand. The transition of power required careful navigation. To maintain stability within the growing empire, and I had done my part to ensure that the foundation was solid. The memory of my life served as a guiding light for the next generation of leaders, a reminder that service and loyalty were the true virtues of a statesman. I had built a bridge between the chaotic civil wars and the emerging age of imperial peace, and it was a bridge that would hold for a long time. The quiet fields of Campania held the body of a man who had shaped the world, and my spirit lingered in the stone arches and the flowing water of my great works. The empire continued to expand and flourish under the guidance of those I had helped to elevate, and my legacy was one of service, loyalty, and an enduring commitment to the welfare of the people. The Pantheon still stands today as a testament to my architectural vision and engineering skill, a marvel that continues to inspire those who walk beneath its dome. It remains one of the best preserved buildings from ancient Rome, a symbol of the peace and prosperity that I helped to create. The water still flows through the channels I laid, and the stone still stands against the sky, a silent promise that the work of peace is never truly finished. I look back on my life with a sense of calm, knowing that I have done my part to build a world that is more beautiful, more functional, and more stable than the one I found. The noise of the world has faded, and there is only the sound of the water and the memory of the stone. The dust of the Forum settled slowly on the shoulders of a city holding its breath, waiting to see which way the wind would turn. I stood amidst the shifting tides of power, watching factions tear at the fabric of the state, with hands that sought to grasp everything and hold nothing. The air smelled of wet stone and unwashed wool, a heavy scent that clung to the back of the throat during those long, uncertain days. I remember the feeling of the rough wool of my own tunic, worn thin at the elbows, a constant reminder that I had not yet climbed the heights of the patrician families. Yet the world was changing, and old rules were crumbling. under the weight of new ambitions. I was elected to speak for the people, a voice rising from the dust, to challenge the silence of the elite. This office placed me in the Senate, a place where I had once only dreamed of entering as a boy. I sat on the wooden benches that creaked under the weight of men who feared the future as much as I did. My friend, the young man who called himself Caesar, moved through the crowd with a quiet confidence that belied his uncertain origins. He wore the name of his adopted father like a heavy cloak, using it to shield himself from the eyes of those who doubted his right to lead. I saw the way he held his head, not with arrogance, but with a steady resolve that seemed to push back the chaos surrounding us. We stood together in the shadow of the great statues, two men bound by a history that predated the political storms raging above us. The bond between us was not forged in the halls of power, but in the quiet moments of youth when we shared a cup of wine and spoke of things that mattered more than titles. I watched him navigate the treacherous waters of succession, offering him the stability of my presence when the ground beneath his feet seemed to shift. There was no grand speech that sealed our pact, only the silent understanding that passed between us as we faced the uncertainty of the dawn. The military campaigns that followed were a blur of mud, blood, and the sharp cry of commands echoing off the hills. I led the legions alongside him, my boots sinking into the soft earth as we marched toward the battles that would define the fate of the world. The smell of iron and sweat was constant, a perfume of war that clung to the skin long after the fighting had ceased. We moved through the countryside, a river of men and horses flowing toward the inevitable clash with those who would deny our rise. In those early days, the strength of my loyalty was the only armor I wore, a shield that protected us both from the arrows of doubt and the spears of betrayal. I did not seek the glory of the triumph, nor the songs of the bards, for my satisfaction lay in the quiet knowledge that we were building something that would outlast the dust. The resilience I had forged in the fires of those early struggles became the foundation for the great works I would later undertake. I rose from a boy of no name to a man whose counsel was sought by the future emperor, a journey marked not by the fanfare of birth but by the weight of action. The historical record would later speak of my 6th consulship, a moment where I stood as a colleague in the new regime. Yet the memory of that time remains a simple thing of shared burden and mutual trust. I did not look for the spotlight, for I knew that the light I sought was the stability of the state, a flame that needed to be protected from the winds of change. The chaos that followed the death of the great dictator had tempered my spirit, making it as hard as the stone of the aqueducts I would one day raise. I became a pillar of the empire, not by seeking to be one, but by simply holding up the weight that others could not bear. My name was written in the records, a testament to a life lived in service to a friend and a nation that was still finding its shape. The foundations of my greatness were laid in these years of struggle, where every step forward was taken with the knowledge that I was not walking alone. The room where a young Roman student might have studied was often a simple space of stone and wood, untouched by the grandeur of the palaces that rose nearby. Sunlight filtered through the high windows to illuminate the dust motes dancing in the air, creating a slow, swirling dance that seemed to have no beginning and no end. A wooden desk held scrolls of papyrus that smelled faintly of ink and aged paper, their edges worn soft by the touch of many hands. The walls were bare, save for the shadows that stretched across them as the day turned, marking the passage of time with a gentle, unobtrusive rhythm. In this quiet space, the noise of the forum faded away, replaced by the soft scratch of a stylus on wax and the low hum of a voice reciting the words of the past. The geometric perfection of the space invites a deep, contemplative breath, allowing the mind to settle into a state of peaceful observation. Shadows lengthen slowly across the interior as the day turns, marking the passage of time with a gentle, unobtrusive rhythm. This architectural marvel remains a silent guardian of the legacy of the man who first raised it, though the man himself is long gone. The stone feels cool to the touch, a constant temperature that defies the heat of the summer sun or the chill of the winter wind. It is a place where the mind can rest, free from the demands of the world outside, suspended in a moment of stillness that feels eternal. My election as tribune was a significant step in my public career, a moment where the voice of the common people found a home in the halls of power. The military campaigns I led alongside Octavian established my reputation as a formidable commander, a man who could turn the tide of battle with a single command. These early experiences were crucial in shaping the man who would later build the navy and win decisive battles against the enemies of the state. The bond I formed with Octavian in our youth remained unbroken throughout our lives, a thread that ran through every victory and every defeat we shared. This friendship was the cornerstone of the political alliance that transformed the Roman Republic into an empire, a structure built on trust rather than the fragile foundations of law. My life story began in the quiet uncertainty of a plebeian family in Roman Italy, a beginning that seemed unlikely to lead to such heights. It evolved into a narrative of service, loyalty, and enduring achievement that resonated through the ages, a story written in the deeds of a man who chose to serve rather than to rule. My early years laid the groundwork for the monumental contributions I would make to the Roman state, a foundation that would support the weight of an empire for centuries to come. The historical record remembers me as a man of substance who rose above the limitations of his origins, a testament to the power of merit and loyalty in the ancient world. My legacy was built on the solid foundation of my early life and the choices I made during those formative years, choices that were guided by a simple desire to see order restored to a chaotic world. The story of Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa is one of quiet strength and enduring partnership in the face of adversity, a story that continues to echo in the stones of Rome. My early life remains a testament to the power of merit and loyalty in the ancient world, a reminder that greatness can arise from the most humble beginnings. It is a curious fact that the ancient Romans used a specific type of concrete, known as opus caementitium, which could set underwater and grow stronger over time, a secret lost for centuries before being rediscovered in modern times. This material became the backbone of my naval constructions and the great buildings that still stand today, a silent witness to the ingenuity of a people who understood the power of stone and time. I used this knowledge to build fleets that could withstand the storms of the Mediterranean and to raise temples that would outlast the men who built them. The strength of the concrete mirrored the strength of the alliance I forged with Octavian, a bond that could endure the test of time and the pressure of history. We worked together to transform the landscape of Rome, turning a city of wood and brick into a monument of marble and stone that would define the era. The ships we built were not just tools of war, but symbols of a new order that was rising from the ashes of the old republic. They cut through the waves with a grace that belied their purpose, carrying the hopes of a nation toward a future that was still unwritten. I watched them sail away, their sails filled with the wind of change, knowing that I had played a part in shaping the destiny of the world. The memory of those days is now a quiet thing, a whisper in the wind that carries the scent of salt and the sound of oars dipping into the water. There is no regret in this memory, only a sense of completion, as if a long journey has finally reached its destination. The stones of the buildings I raised still stand, a testament to the work of a man who knew that the true measure of a life is not in the titles it holds, but in the final years unfolded with a quiet dignity that belied the military ferocity of my earlier days. I stepped away from the constant campaigns that had defined my youth to focus on civic improvements within Rome. My health began to decline gradually during the winter, months preceding my death in March of 12 BC. This passing occurred in the warm, fertile region of Campania, far from the bustling streets of the capital. I sought respite from the burdens of state at a private estate where the air smelled of olive groves and damp earth. The exact location remained a sanctuary, a place where the noise of the forum could not reach. My death marked a pivotal moment for the Roman succession and the future of the empire. Without my strong hand, the focus of imperial inheritance shifted significantly toward the sons of Livia. Augustus lost his most trusted lieutenant and the father of his designated heirs. I had previously married the daughter of Augustus, Julia, in a union that strengthened the imperial family. This marriage produced 3 sons and 2 daughters who carried the blood of both great families. The 2 eldest sons were adopted by Augustus in 17 BC and given the names Gaius and Lucius Caesar. These boys were raised as the future leaders of Rome under the watchful eye of their grandfather. Tragedy would later befall the family when Julia faced exile for her conduct and independence. Yet in my final days, I remained a devoted father and a steadfast supporter of the regime. I continued to oversee public works even as my strength waned during that final winter. The Pantheon was among the projects I initiated, though it would be completed by later emperors. My architectural legacy stood as a testament to my vision for a peaceful and prosperous Rome. The city benefited from my extensive network of aqueducts and public baths that improved daily life. I ensured that water flowed freely to the people through my engineering expertise and dedication. The aqueducts I built remained functional for centuries after my departure from this world. My administrative skills were as formidable as my tactical genius had been on the battlefield. I managed the vast resources of the empire with a steady and reliable hand. The Senate held me in high regard for my loyalty and my unwavering support of Augustus. My death left a void that no other general could easily fill in the imperial court. The transition of power required careful navigation to maintain stability within the growing empire. Livia used this opportunity to advance the interests of her own sons by a former marriage. The political landscape shifted subtly as the new generation prepared to take the reins of power. My sons would eventually face their own challenges, but I had secured their status early on. The adoption of Gaius and Lucius ensured a clear line of succession for the time being. Their names were placed prominently in the public records and on the coins of the realm. The memory of me served as a guiding light for the next generation of leaders. I had built a foundation upon which the Pax Romana would eventually rest. My life was a bridge between the chaotic civil wars and the emerging age of imperial peace. The quiet fields of Campania held the body of a man who had shaped the world. My spirit lingered in the stone arches and the flowing water of my great works. The empire continued to expand and flourish under the guidance of those I had helped to elevate. My legacy was one of service, loyalty, and an acceptance of the natural order of things. The historical record preserves my name as a man of action who preferred substance over style in all my endeavors. My contributions to the stability of the Augustan regime were as vital as any battle I won or building I constructed. The personal sacrifices I made for the greater good were never publicly lamented, but were deeply felt by those who knew me best. My memory endures as a symbol of the ideal Roman citizen who placed the needs of the state above his own desires. The great dome of the Pantheon rises above the surrounding city like a perfect hemisphere carved from the sky itself. Sunlight filters through the single opening at the apex, casting a moving circle of light that travels slowly across the polished stone floor. The interior air is cool and still, carrying the faint scent of ancient dust and dry marble. Shadows lengthen gradually as the day turns, marking the passage of time with a gentle, unobtrusive rhythm. The geometric perfection of the space invites a deep, contemplative breath, allowing the mind to settle into a state of peaceful observation. This architectural marvel remains a silent guardian of the legacy of the man who first raised it. I died in March of 12 BC, and my name was eventually etched into the stone of history through my works. The phrase goes, Tertium on the Pantheon. Inscription emphasizes my political stature, influencing interpretations of Hadrian's intentions. My death in Campania marked the end of an era of active military and civic leadership. But my spirit lived on in the structures I built. Some contexts do not mention Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa, yet my impact was undeniable. My sons were adopted by Augustus in 17 BC, ensuring my lineage would continue to shape the empire. The legacy of Agrippa was one of quiet strength, visible in the enduring stones of Rome. The historical record of Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa faded into a quiet silence after my death in March of 12 BC. I passed away in the peaceful region of Campania, leaving behind a legacy that would slowly reshape the Roman world. My physical presence vanished from the political stage, yet my architectural and administrative contributions remained visible for centuries. The Pantheon, originally constructed under my direction, stood as a permanent testament to my engineering genius and civic vision. Inscriptions on that great structure preserved the phrase cause tertium, which emphasized my high political stature long after my life ended. This specific title on the stone served as a silent reminder of my 3 consulships and my vital role in the state. Later generations often overlooked my personal name while admiring the buildings I commissioned for the public good. The narrative of the Augustan age frequently centered on the emperor himself, casting me as a supporting figure in the drama of empire. Some modern scholars have noted that the provided texts do not always mention Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa by name in general summaries. This omission sometimes obscures the depth of my influence on the stability of the new regime. My 2 eldest sons, with Julia, were adopted by Augustus in 17 BC, a move that secured the future line of succession. These boys, named Gaius and Lucius Caesar, carried the blood of Agrippa into the heart of the imperial family. Their key roles in this imperial history mark them as valuable figures in the biographical and feminist studies of the Roman Empire. The silence surrounding my funeral honors remains a gap in the historical record, as the stone floor of the gallery is cool beneath my bare feet. A sensation that has remained unchanged for centuries. I walk slowly among the frames, watching the light shift across canvases that once burned with a fever only one man could feel. My hands, now trembling slightly, reach out to touch the empty air. Where a sunflower once stood tall and golden, the silence here is different from the harbor. It is a hushed reverence, a collective holding of breath by thousands who have come to see what was left behind. I remember the small room in Overs where the paint dried on the palette, the smell of turpentine and linseed oil mixing with the dust of the attic. Those days were long and heavy, filled with the scratch of brushes and the quiet hum of a mind working too hard. I did not know then that these strokes would outlast the empires we built and the wars we fought. I only knew that the yellow was too bright and the blue was too deep, and that I had to capture them before they vanished. A young woman stood in that room, her eyes bright with a hope that I could not share. She took the letters and the paintings, carrying them away from the silence that followed my last breath. She organized the chaos of my life, turning scattered canvases into a story that the world could understand. Her hands moved with a purpose I never possessed, arranging the colors and the lines into a narrative of struggle and beauty. She spoke to critics who did not understand, to dealers who saw only profit, and to the public who needed to see something real. She built a reputation from the fragments I left behind, piece by piece, until the world began to look at my work with new eyes. The first exhibition was small, a quiet gathering in a Parisian gallery where the air smelled of rain and old paper. I remember the feeling of the frames leaning against the walls, waiting to be seen, waiting to speak a language that had no words. Years passed, and the silence of that small room was replaced by the roar of a new artistic movement. The young painters who came after me saw the world through a lens I had ground for them, though they did not always know my name. They took the raw emotion and the broken forms and made them into something wild and free. The expressionists painted with a violence that mirrored the storms inside my head, while the Fauves used colors that screamed with a joy I rarely felt. They walked through the ruins of my life and found a foundation strong enough to build upon. The influence spread like a slow fire, moving from Paris to Berlin, from Amsterdam to New York, changing the way people saw the world. I watched from the quiet distance as Museums were built to hold my work, as critics wrote volumes about the meaning of a single brushstroke. The legacy was not mine alone. It was a conversation that began with me and continued long after I had stopped speaking. The light in the gallery shifts as the afternoon wears on, casting long shadows across the polished floor. A single painting of a cafe terrace glows with a warmth that feels almost alive, the yellow lights seeming to flicker against the dark blue of the night. The crowd moves slowly around it, a river of faces that blur together in the periphery of my vision. They stand in silence, looking at the stars that I painted so long ago, trying to find the same wonder that I felt when I first looked up at the sky. The air is still, filled only with the soft rustle of coats and the occasional whisper of awe. It is a strange thing to be remembered this way, to have your pain turned into something beautiful that others can touch and feel. The anger and the fear that once consumed me have been distilled into color, into light, into a form that can be held in the mind without hurting. A specific fact remains clear in my memory. Delivered without fanfare, the first major retrospective of my work was held in 1901, exactly 12 years after my death, at the Bernheim June Gallery in Paris. I was not there to see it, but I know that the room was filled with people who wept as they looked at the wheat fields and the cypress trees. They saw the life that had been hidden behind the madness, the love that had been buried under the pain. The curator had hung the paintings in a way that told a story, a narrative of a soul that had wandered through the dark and found a way to shine. I remember the feeling of the gallery walls, the smell of the varnish, the sound of the crowd moving from one room to the next. It was a moment of quiet triumph, a final acknowledgement that the work had survived. The museum is a vast space, filled with the echoes of 1,000 footsteps and the hum of 1,000 voices. I walk through the halls, seeing my own history reflected in the eyes of strangers. The paintings are no longer mine. They belong to the world, to the people who come to find something of themselves in the colors and the lines. They see the sky, the sea, the stars, and they feel a connection that transcends time and distance. The legacy is not in the fame or the money, but in the quiet moments of recognition that happen in these rooms. It is in the way a child stops to look at a sunflower, or an old man weeps at a portrait of a woman. The work continues to live, to breathe, to change with every viewer who stands before it. The light fades slowly, turning the white walls a soft gray, and the paintings seem to settle into the shadows. I feel a deep sense of peace, a completion that I never found in life. The story is told, the work is done, and the silence that follows is not empty. It is full of the echoes of a life that mattered, of a voice that was heard long after it had stopped speaking. The world has moved on, but the colors remain, bright and true, waiting for the next generation to discover them. I close my eyes and listen to the quiet hum of the museum, the distant sound of the city outside, and the soft breathing of the people.